Kip, what's up, man? Good to see you. And you got the right clothes on today, so that's always a bonus as well.
Yeah. Sometimes I forget to call you to ask you what you're wearing, but luckily we got on the same page this morning and
We're on
was
the
able to
same
coordinate.
wavelength. Mine looks better though. Mine's like a more vibrant, better looking orange than yours.
Was that? Well, maybe I'm just repping Order of Man more than you are, so mine's worn out.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a clever comeback and I couldn't. Well, maybe I just have more than one. So, anyways, whatever. It's not working. Good to see you, Kip.
Yeah. Good afternoon.
We got some questions, it
Cool.
sounds like, that we're going to address today. So I think we ought to just hop right into them.
Yeah, let's do it. So the majority of our questions today, depending on how many we get through, Iron Council. To learn more about the Iron Council, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. Our first question, Zach Carbon. How do you slow down, learn to relax, and prevent burnout? As men, we like to attack objectives and goals full throttle, but if we never take the time to recharge and reconnect, the burnout will take us out of action.
Man, slowing down is hard, especially for high achievers, hard chargers. It is for me. But the thing that helped me the best to be able to slow down is, well, let me reframe it. I used to think that slowing down was non-productive. So if I had to choose between doing something, work or whatever, and doing nothing, like reading a book, relaxing, enjoying time with the family, that sort of thing, I used to look at it as non-productive time. But I reframed that and realized that when you are slowing down, when you are recharging, when you are engaging different parts of your mind and just life in general, that actually is a productivity activity. It's a productive activity because it helps you be that much more efficient in other facets of your life. So what I learned to do is cut out things that were trivial or non-important. And today, man, I feel like I'm running around like a chicken with his head cut off because I've got project after task after phone call after email, and it's not as productive for me if I focus on the few things that are critically important, and just focus heavily on those, and then take that time to be able to relax and rejuvenate and recharge. So I think you're looking at it wrong, just like I used to look at it, which is non-productive. It's a waste of time. I used to feel that way about sleep too. It's like I hated sleeping because there's 6, 7, 8 hours that I could be doing something else, and instead I'm having to like recharge my body. But obviously, as I get older, it becomes more and more important, and I can see that if I get a good night's rest, that I'm that much more effective and efficient the next day. So reframe this from a negative to actually a productive activity that you ought to engage in.
When you take the time to, I don't know, reconnect or recharge, do you find that productivity is increased in those areas when you are productive? Like you're more efficient, you're getting more done in those windows when you make that a priority?
Are you saying, am I more productive in the quote unquote productive time or in the recharge time, the productive time?
In the productive time, like if you take time to recharge when you are working or you are being productive, it pays off for itself. Like it makes up
Oh, of
for that
course.
recharge time.
Of course. Even with less time, I'm more focused, I'm more effective, more productive with less time. I'll give you an example of this. Years ago in my financial planning practice, I had made the decision to cut my Friday afternoon short from leaving at roughly 5:30, 6 o'clock to leaving at 2 o'clock, leaving the office at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I thought my production would suffer, but I was okay with that because the business was doing well, things were rolling. I wanted to make sure I spent more time with my family. So I was comfortable with lower production in the business. Actually, the exact opposite ended up happening. My Fridays became hyper productive because I realized that I had 3.5, 4 hours less time to be engaged, to be productive, to be busy with my work. And I became more efficient. And Fridays actually ended up becoming my most effective and productive days because I had less time to do it. I wasn't dinking around. I wasn't wasting time. There wasn't a bunch of loss of time due to switching from task to task. So I found the exact opposite to be true, which is, to your point, you're just going to be more effective in that time frame.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we can all be, I'm assuming everyone has done this. And I think we've used this analogy a few times in the past where you have an hour to do the impossible. And it's like, I'm going to give it my best shot. You're hyper focused. And then you actually accomplish the thing that you were like paranoid about, that you had minimal time. And you're like, whoa, like I got a lot done in that hour because I was insanely focused. And it's funny is sometimes we wait until our backs are against the wall to have that type of laser focus. When rowdy, we could do that more often and allow ourselves all this necessary time to reconnect and everything else if we just really hyper focus and be intentional with what we're doing.
That's exactly right. Yep. That's exactly right.
All right. Luke Watts, which battle team is the best?
Brocker. That's the battle team leader. Team. Next question.
I'm not going to. Well, Luke's like throwing out his battle team name. I'm like, yeah, moving on. He says, which advice would you give new fire?
I want to know what battle team he's part of.
Well, is this bad that I'm not even Ariat? Is it?
Oh, Arate.
Arate. See, yeah. I don't even know how to pronounce the battle team name.
Come on.
Apparently, Luke, you guys aren't that popular.
His is the best.
For him.
That's what he wanted to hear. So his is the best.
All right. So Arate, by the way, Arate just reached 13 members. So, yep. And they're moving into fire teams. So, and I left this question in, Ryan, because I think maybe one, you can give an example of the power behind fire teams, and people can relate to this even outside the Iron Council. He says, what advice would you give new fire team leaders for Arate and other new teams in the IC, and what are the key carryovers for the rest of your life?
The advice I would give is no different than what you've actually been hearing. It's to be accountable. It's to hold others accountable. A fire team, by the way, is a group within a battle team. So we've got battle teams, 12 to 15 man teams, and then within that we've got fire teams, which are 3 to 4 man teams that are more tightly knit accountability units, I guess you could say, is how I describe it.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. It's holding those people accountable. It's not letting them shirk their work or their responsibilities or the tasks, the things they've identified as being important. It's doing it yourself. Right? You can't lead. You can't hold somebody accountable to something that you're not willing to be accountable to yourself. So that's very important. And then the other component is just consistency. You know, I know a lot of guys, not just within the battle teams and fire teams and Iron Council in general, but in life, who are very inconsistent. And if there's one skill that I think, there's a lot of skills, but this is a very, very important skill to your success, and that is consistency. Men are just not consistent enough. They get hopped up, they get hyped up, they get emotional, they get motivated, inspired, and the rah-rah type stuff, and they do it for a week or 2 weeks, and then it gets boring, you know, it gets monotonous. This podcast is a great example of that. At times, it's like, another podcast. Yeah, it's not always as exciting as maybe somebody hearing it would think it would be, but I made a commitment, and so this is work, this is a job, and so I'm hyper consistent in this. Same thing with exercise. You know, you can't go in on Saturday and bust it for 5 or 6 hours and think that's going to be better than putting in 45 minutes to an hour every single day. Of course, the consistency is what's going to produce the result. So be careful of the emotional roller coasters, the highs and the lows, and try to shave those off. Not so high on the peaks and not so low on the valleys, and try to level out your performance so that you can maintain that for a very, very long time. And of course, to his second point of that question, those are the types of things that are going to translate over into every other facet of your life.
Yeah. Is there anything else? Like, we have a question from John Jenkinson as well, and he had a similar question about current exercise routines, cardio and strength, and staying motivated on a daily basis to ensure that you're consistent. Is there anything else that you would add? Meaning, like, don't overdo it. What else would you add to that list of kind of tips around consistency and ensuring that you stick with it even when you're not motivated?
I think the term stoicism comes to mind for me. I think when it comes to your consistency, your ability to maintain your emotional bearings, we'll call it, is going to be very, very important. Because if you're determining how you perform based on how you feel, it's fleeting, it's all over the place. And so you want to be very, very careful of allowing your emotions to dictate your performance and your activity. So like I said a second ago, I try to shave off the highs. Like I try not to be overly emotional in a positive way, deliberately and intentionally.
Yeah.
Because if I'm relying on that as my motivator to do something, then, that's an external circumstance. There's something else that might happen throughout the day that's beyond my control that will dictate whether or not I honor and uphold my commitments to myself. So again, the term stoicism is what comes to mind. It's just, I've committed, I'm doing the work. The other thing that I've found too is if you say yes to something, maybe it's helping a friend move, for example, this weekend. You might be tempted at some point to back out of that because you don't want to do it. Who wants to do that? Of course. And so you'll come up with an excuse or a reason not to do it. I think beyond just being a man of your word, I actually think it's very, very important for you to do the things that you say you're going to do, obviously because of integrity, but also because you'll learn the lesson of saying yes to things you shouldn't say yes to. Right? Because if you say yes and then you just back out of things willy-nilly, people are going to think less of you. You're out of integrity, but also you're not suffering the consequence of making a poor decision. So if you say, yeah, Kip, I'll go help you move this weekend, and you're trying to back out of it, just go do it. Because the next person who says, hey, will you help me move? You'll say no. And I'm not saying you should not help your friends, but I think people can understand that that's going to apply in different situations. If you say yes, it's got to be a yes. And you have to learn the sting, the lesson, so that you'll say no next time when you probably ought to say no in the first place.
Yeah. And I would just to add to that, moving's probably a little bit, that example doesn't it's not a good example for what I'm about to say, but I think sometimes we commit to something and then we'll half-ass it and we'll go, oh, well, I'll do the bare minimum to get it done because, because I don't have enough time. You know what's even better? Don't half-ass it. Do an amazing job. Right. Get no sleep at all, turn it in, and then you go, okay, learn my lesson, right? So for me to do the job correctly and then pay the consequence as well. But we rob ourselves sometimes, even if we keep to the commitment and we still do a half-assed job.
It's funny. I saw a comment to one of my posts that I made the other day, and I was talking about setting the standard high for yourself. And a guy commented back and he's like, I don't set a high standard, that way I don't disappoint myself. And he was joking, but I think maybe he wasn't. But I wrote back and I said, why not set a high bar for yourself and then do the work so you don't disappoint yourself? Like there's another option here, right? So you can set the standard low for yourself and you won't be disappointed or miss your expectations. Yeah, that's a strategy. That's a strategy. Or you can set the bar high and actually do the work and not disappoint yourself. So you got to look at what is the other better way of doing this?
Totally. Well, I was talking with someone just the other day about this. They're like, oh, I can't even remember the scenario, but it was like, oh, I feel so sorry for him because, he feels really guilty or blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, awesome. Good. And they're like, that's not good that he feels that way. I'm like, yeah, it is. Yeah, because now he'll learn and make adjustments and evolve. Right? Like that's how it is. Or you could even see it like body shaming, it's like, love yourself or evolve your body and get in physical shape so you're proud of yourself. That's an option too.
That's something you could do as well. Look, this is the whole problem with what we've created in society. It's like, I don't want people to feel bad. And people are going to feel bad. And they should actually. Like when I lose, let's say I'm being competitive in some environment and I lose, I feel bad about that. And you know what? I should feel bad about that enough to say, I don't want that to happen again. Now, there's two things that could happen. I could retreat and never do it at all. And that's not what I'm suggesting. Give up, right? Yeah. What I'm suggesting is you go back to the drawing board and figure out how you need to shore up your performance so that you can win next time. But sometimes the quote unquote negative emotion, and I only use quotations because I don't think any emotion is negative, but sometimes the quote unquote negative one is the right emotion. Sometimes you should, if you eat all the chips and salsa and the entire thing of ice cream and you're guilty about that, you should feel guilty about that. That's absolutely right. If you miss out on a training session that you had made a commitment to going to and you feel bad or you feel like a loser, you should absolutely feel like that. That is the proper response. And so we've created this society where we strip away any, I'll use the term opportunity, to feel the sting of defeat or to feel the shame and the guilt of not performing to your standard. And I think it's a real detriment to society, and it's a real detriment to our maximum performance. This is why so many people are just wallowing around in complacency and mediocrity, because we've created the incentives to do it.
Yeah. And at the root of it, I think, is this additional meaning of it. Those things define us, but you can overcome them, right? It's like, oh, you feel bad about it? Awesome. Feel bad, feel remorse, and change and evolve and become better. And you're capable of doing that. Like, you are in control of the circumstance and yourself. Right. But instead it's like, oh, don't feel bad. And maybe you're not in control. Like, there's the other message that's being taught. And that other message is you're a victim of yourself.
Yeah.
and you don't have control over things. It's gnarly. It's crazy. And I really think, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, several months ago, my second son had his first wrestling tournament, and his first match, he beat the kid pretty handedly. I mean, it was awesome. And so he got excited.
Who is this? Is this Otto, or who's this?
No, Eli, our second son.
Eli. Okay.
Yeah. So he's 9. So he was really excited about it. And he thought he was kind of untouchable, right? Cause he's like, I won my first match. I'm good at this.
Yeah.
And then he wrestled with the next kid for a second match, and the kid destroyed him. Just absolutely destroyed him. And he got up and he was a little teary-eyed. I'm like, talk to me, man. What's wrong? He's like, I just feel bad because I lost. And I said, you should feel bad. That's absolutely the right response. What are you going to do about it? And he's like, I'm going to get better. And he was so excited to go back to wrestling because he wanted to improve and he wanted to get better. And I had shared this story on Instagram or Twitter or something. And I had a bunch of people come back and say, oh, well, you should have blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no, you can do that with your kids. That's not the kind of adults I'm raising. Like, I'm not going to tell my kid it's okay that you lost. You should feel good. Oh, did you have fun out here? Because that's what really matters. No, that's not what matters at all. What matters is that you're here to improve yourself, and you're pitting yourself against another human being who's trained and practiced, and then you can see where you stand. And you didn't stack up. So you should feel bad about that. That's why you came here. You knew you were capable of more, and you know you have more potential, and you didn't meet it. So you should feel bad about that. Now, some people say, Ryan, that's really abusive. No, it's not. And you can deliver that in a tactful way, but I'm not raising losers. I'm raising winners. And that means I need to be truthful with them. You feel bad, bud? Good. That's the right response. If you didn't feel bad about it, I would be worried.
Yeah.
I would wonder why you don't care about this, or why you don't care about yourself. But you know you're capable of more. That's why you feel bad. So what are we going to do about it? And he came up with a solution, and he trained, and he got better. Voila. Like, this isn't a mystery. But if you take that away from your kids or other people, the opportunity, the experience of these painful emotions, you're crippling them and you're limiting their potential.
Yeah. I want to provide clarity or distinction. You said I raise winners, not losers. And hopefully we're on the same page here. But what I hear you're saying is, what's the definition of winner and loser? A winner evolves, grows, pivots, adjusts, doesn't give up, continues to become better. It's not about, Ryan saying, oh, I have winners, we get medals. No, it's not actually just about winning, but it's actually about constantly growing. That is what a winner does.
Exactly.
They evolve and they become constantly better. A loser gives up. So from that context, do you want kids? Do you want to raise kids that give up? That the first sign of trouble, they throw their hands up and woe is me and I can't do it. And they don't believe in themselves and have no confidence in their ability to become better? It's crazy to think that's what we're suggesting. No.
Nobody would want that, but no parent would want that, but their actions are speaking otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you made that distinction because people are ridiculous. Yes, I'm not talking about literally winning everything they do. I lose every day. I do something that doesn't work out. Every day that happens.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean I'm a loser.
Yeah.
Right. That doesn't mean I'm a loser. It means I lost that thing, sure. But it doesn't make me or define me as a loser. So I'm glad you brought that caveat up because sometimes I worry people are incapable of any level of rational discernment. Proceed.
All right, Corey.
Although I will say our podcast listeners are higher than the average person out there who, can't really try to understand what it is we're trying to say.
What percent do we call these guys? Is this the 20%? Is it that low? Is it higher? Of society,
you mean of performer, like of society, like of high
society
high quality,
that critically
high
thinks.
Oh, yeah. 20%? That's high.
You think that's high?
Dude, that's high. 10% might be pushing it.
Yeah.
I mean, they're out there. I'm not trying to be, pessimistic about it. I mean, they're certainly out there, but 20% is high.
Yeah. Yeah. It's unfortunate. All right. To read or find those controversial posts, which aren't controversial, you can follow Ryan and on Instagram and Twitter at Ryan Mickler. All right. Ryan and
You're
Kip.
Getting better at these segues, brother. I got to tell you, man. I'm impressed.
I have all these notes up here of drop this stuff in. Nice hat, by the way. Where did you get that? I was just joking.
Good one. All right.
All right. Ryan and Kip, I'd love to know your thoughts on investing your own money into a startup business and how to explain to your wife that the pros outweigh the cons when all she can see are dollar signs, the pros versus the cons.
All right. So there's a lot to unpack here. And a startup business, I'm not sure if he's saying, who is this, by the way?
This is Corey Kress.
All right, Corey.
Battle Team Rome. Yeah.
So I'm not sure if Corey is talking about a startup that he would not be part of or a startup that he would be actively engaged and part of.
I'm assuming actively engaged because you said investing in your own money into your startup. So
your startup. I didn't hear that. So yeah. So what are my thoughts about that? Yes, absolutely. You should do that. Those are my thoughts. If you have a startup, you have an idea, you have an interest or a pursuit or a passion, or you're connected with somebody and you have an affinity towards whatever they're building, yes, you should do that. Now, don't be stupid, don't be reckless, but certainly, I mean, that's what I did with Order of Man. You've done that. You've had businesses. Yeah. Yes, you should do that. Okay. Any disagreement on that, Kip?
Nope.
Okay. Second part of this. How do you get your wife to understand? This is the long game, brother. This is the long game, okay? And we've got to rewind, and you have to ask yourself, why should she trust you? And you have to look at it as objectively as possible because she actually might not have a reason to. You might have done, for example, some other investing in the past, and it didn't pan out and it didn't go well. So now you come to her and say, hey, I'm going to invest in this thing, and all she sees is not dollar signs. She, of course, yes, but she also sees the past failures, and then she translates that to what has changed. Well, nothing has changed, so this is going to produce a similar result. So your work, you're a little past right here, okay? And I'm not suggesting that you haven't done this, okay? But people need to understand this. Your work on getting her to be bought into you doing a startup should have started 10 years ago. On the last thing, the last harebrained idea that you had, and you should have made that one work. And then the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So that when you go to her and you say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing. What do you think? She's like, yeah, you should absolutely do that. Deal. because she knows you have a proven track record of success. So why would she doubt that? So what I would do is I would go back and inventory some other decisions, big decisions that you've made. Because look, all that she sees is the risk. And I think generally women are more prone to be worried about the risk involved. And men historically are more likely to take those risks. So you're at odds a little bit here. So the best
just
way
by default. Yeah.
Just by default, just by human nature.
Yeah.
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 So again, go back, look at what you've done, look at what has worked. And you know what? If you come to the conclusion that things have worked, then you need to connect the dots for her. I'm not saying she's stupid or incapable of doing it herself. You just need to say, hey, hun, you remember 5 years ago we had this opportunity and I started the business and it worked out really well and then I sold it to my business partner? Yeah, I do remember that. Well, we're going to do similar things here, right? So you start connecting the dots. If it hasn't gone well in the past, then what you start to communicate and illustrate to her is, hey, look, hun, you got to own it. You have to own it. Bring it up first. It's a preemptive strike here. Hey, hun, look, yeah. I'm going to be investing this money in the startup, or I'd like to, and I want to get your blessing. This is important. This is our decision. It's our money. So I'm going to put $50,000 into this thing. And I realized that in the past, I've made some decisions financially that haven't always panned out real great for us and have frankly put us in a bad spot. Own it. Because what you're doing is you're taking away the objection up front. This is sales training 101 right here, okay? So, hey, hon, I've made these decisions in the past. I took out money on our home and I put it into a hard money deal and it went south and we lost $10,000. And then, I gave my brother that $5,000 loan because he needed to get a new vehicle. And then it ended up getting repoed and we lost the $5,000, whatever. Okay. Whatever it is. But here's why this time it's different. Here's what I've learned. Here's what I'm doing to mitigate the risk. Here's why these partners are good for this. So you bring up the objection and then you have a plan for answering and dealing and addressing the objections that she has. That's what I'd give.
Yeah. And she might have some valid feedback, right? By involving her in this process, she might be like, hey, did you consider this? Because this is where you went wrong last time. Involve her, not just to convince her, but bring her along and get her engaged and enrolled in the conversation. One thing that I always, and this is a little bit related to investment of a startup, but I think you could transcend this to anything. And I use this all the time on Asia. And by the way, let's clarify. If you had a new startup idea today and you asked your wife, hey, honey, what do you think? What would she say?
My wife? Oh, she'd be like, do it, sign up. How come you haven't done it already?
Totally. And mine as well. She should be like, do it. Right. Because of history, right. And a track record. So, but anyhow, what I was going to say is in the times where maybe my wife and I are on the same page and she just feels emotionally about it, concerned about it, I can go to the table and say, hey, babe, for you to feel good about this approach, right? For you to feel good about investing this much money, where would we need to be ahead of that? Right? How much would make you feel comfortable to be in savings, or how much of these things would you like to see first for you to feel good about that idea? Back into it and get an insight of what's really causing the discomfort and the concern about risk and address those and then proceed forward. That might be a constructive way of understanding her point of view.
Yeah, I think that, and along those same lines is just ask her what her concerns are. If she's like, no, I don't think we should do it. It would be easy to be upset. Oh, well, you don't understand. Blah, blah.
You never trust me.
Yeah. Right. It'd be easy to go that route. But just ask her, oh, okay, you don't think we should. Are there some specific reasons that you don't think we should? What are your specific concerns? Maybe I can help you understand those. Not that we have to come to a better conclusion or my conclusion. I'm just really curious to see if we can figure out what's going on here. And I think she'll be.
And you might grow from that too.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you'll probably recognize blind spots. Like she's like, look, she might say, yeah, Kip, I don't trust him, and you're going into business with him, and I don't trust him. Okay, well, I want to know, like, my wife's pretty intuitive.
Why?
Like, I would want to know that.
Yeah.
If I'm going to go into business with you, I'm like, okay, well, what does she see that I've overlooked? Because I like Kip, but what's happening here, right?
This is all
I wanna know that.
hypothetical, by the way.
Yeah. This is nothing that happened last. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, it's hypothetical.
This is why we're not doing that project together.
That's right. Okay, there's one other point that I made that I had written a note here. When you're communicating with your wife, there's a school of thought that says you should only share what's working well. In fact, I've had mentors tell me that. You should only communicate with your wife what's working well because she needs to see you in that light. I disagree with that. I think that you need to share your wins and losses. Now, there's some caveats to this because I don't believe that a woman wants to hear you act like a woman. Okay, and let me explain this. Let me break this down. Women, they want to share their experiences, but it seems to me in a lot of times they're more venting and more vocalizing it because they're relational and they don't really need like an active path forward. Would you agree with that generally?
Yeah. Well,
The women,
this starts.
and I will say this:
going.
the women who aren't like that, and I've met some in business in particular, they're very masculine. I'm not saying they look like men. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying their behavior.
But they have more masculinity.
Yes. So you see a lot of successful women in the business environment. When I've seen, there's two in particular I'm thinking of, and they are great leaders of their organizations. They're very masculine in their approach about no nonsense, no BS, structured, path forward, charging hard. Those are masculine characteristics and qualities. And the women who are successful in those spaces, that's what they've tapped into. Okay. Now, the reason I say this is if you go to your wife and you communicate with her like a woman, you might be undermining your credibility and authority. So what I'm saying is don't go to her and gripe about all the things that are going wrong in your life. Oh, I did this thing and this didn't happen and I can't get new clients and my life sucks and blah, 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 blah. No, that's the type of relationship that she needs to have with a girlfriend where they can do that together. Oh, my boyfriend and oh, my job and oh, what? That's what they do together. You don't do that with your wife. What you do is, and I've done this. Hey, hon, I made a stupid decision. We're out, whatever, $2,000, whatever. Okay, I'm just making something up, right? And I wanted to tell you because I respect you and I think you need to know. I think it's important that you know. And also I want to tell you what I'm about to do about it and how I'm going to fix it. And then you do it. So guys will think, oh, well, I just undermined myself because I admitted I did something stupid. No, you actually solidified your credibility because you pointed it out. So you owned it. That's a very admirable quality, owning your mistakes. And then you outlined a roadmap to fix it. And then you did it. And she saw you do it. She's like, oh yeah, he told me he screwed up. He said he was going to do X, Y, and Z. He did X, Y, and Z. And now he fixed the problem. You're better looking. You're more compelling. You're more influential. You're more attractive to her because you went through that entire process. So I do believe that you need to share wins and losses. Go ahead. Yep. Say what you're going to say.
So in that example, Ryan, would you say, let's say I go to my wife and I say, hey, honey, I just lost this 10 grand. Mistake. This is where I went wrong. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make these corrections and changes. And then and I'm using this as an example. 2 days later, I start doubting myself a little bit like, man, I sure hope this works. And now I'm concerned and I'm second guessing myself. Would you say that is an example of the conversation you don't have with her to enter all this noise and stories that you're running about yourself?
unless you're going to her for advice. Okay,
If it's
so
just fear,
let's take that.
yeah, that
let's
you
take that
communicated,
example. Yeah, let's take that example. You lost $10,000. You did something, whatever. Okay, you communicated with her, and then you lay out the roadmap, and then you go back and you're like, oh, I'm just worried. I'm concerned. I'm fearful. Yeah, you don't. She doesn't need to know that, because just get over it and do it. It doesn't matter if you're afraid. Like, fix your shit, right?
Yeah.
But if you go to her and you say, hey, hon, you remember when I told you I was going to do X, Y, and Z? Well, I did X and Y, but Z is proving to be a little difficult because of these circumstances. What do you think? Can you see anything or think of anything that I'm not aware of, or maybe I have a blind spot here? And she gives you a little bit of insight or a different perspective you hadn't considered. Yeah, I think that's a good thing. But just go into her and say, I'm scared and I don't know what to do, and please, no.
Yeah.
Definitely don't want to do that.
And what's fun about this conversation, Ryan, is I remember in times of my life where I've had this impression, right, of like, well, I should be I should be communicating my feelings often. And what's interesting about it in the example that we just gave is the fear or the doubt that I'm having. Is that true? and so we're like, oh, you should have open communication and communicate based upon falseness, based upon
I don't
self-doubt.
quite understand.
Well,
your self-doubt, is it real or is it something you're making it up?
Exactly, right? And so sometimes the communication of something that's not real, right? We're communicating like,
yeah, but
there's danger in communicating something that is not even factual, right?
No, I don't agree, because your emotions are real. Like, so we're starting to bump up against that territory of like, fear is false evidence appearing real. No, fear is real. Like, it's a legitimate emotion. Now, what you're afraid of, you might be able to address it. So maybe you're interpreting a situation incorrectly, and that's what's making you afraid. So the fear is real still. It's not just some made up thing that you shouldn't pay attention to. It's like, okay, well, I'm afraid. Well, why am I afraid? Well, because I've experienced in the past, and I lost, or I got hurt, or I got injured, or whatever. And so, okay, that's good feedback. What can I do to mitigate the risk now?
Yeah.
So
I
if
see what you're saying is,
you're afraid. If you're guilty, you're guilty. If you have self-doubt, that's legit. Now, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, I think the distinction that's helping me here, Ryan, is that you realize that there's interpretation, that it is fear, that it is self-doubt, and you're not coming to the table with, oh, this is what's happening. It's like, no. That's fear that you're feeling. Those are self-doubts that you're feeling. And as long as we're clear on those emotions, then it's obviously safe to communicate.
Yeah, I think let's take fear as the emotion. I think there's different lenses of fear, right? Like, so you're going to go to the optometrist and you're going to get some different glasses, and there's all different styles and all different variations, and some are farsighted and short-sighted, all that stuff, right? I think emotions in general are very much the same way. So one lens you could look at is the healthy lens of fear. Hey, I'm afraid, so I'm interpreting this situation through my lens of fear, but it's healthy, and so it's helping me see things that I normally wouldn't see, so that I can come up with plans to deal with it. An unhealthy lens is, I'm afraid, and then you start misinterpreting everything because of your fear, and maybe you try to back yourself out of it. Maybe you see things as scarier than they really are. Maybe you make up
excuses,
scenarios.
blame someone else.
Yes. Yeah. That's not a healthy lens of fear. It's still fear. You're just looking at it through a different lens, and it's not really serving you all that well. So yeah, I don't share my emotions necessarily with my wife. I mean, I might express them, but I don't explain them. I don't understand what the purpose of that would be, to tell her I'm afraid. I wouldn't say that. Like, that wouldn't instill in me any sort of confidence in a leader that I was following.
Yeah.
So,
and And I don't, sorry, I don't want to rat hole on this too much, but this has been something on my mind of late, because I think, at least for me, and I was speaking with someone else about this just last week, how much like we have this, or at least maybe it's just me, but it seems like there's more than just me in this world, that we have this perception of like the ideal marriage, or the best way to connect with a woman is to express those things, to express your fears and explain them and all those things. And I'm now learning at 41 years old that actually that doesn't serve her, and might generate more doubt in our relationship, and might introduce and it's not ideal, and that's not really what is best for her or best for our relationship. And it's kind of sad to let that go and go, oh damn, I had this romantic perception of how that should look like, and it's probably not accurate.
Right. So where did you learn that? And I'm not saying just you, but I'm saying, where have men learned that? From women.
Yeah. My moms. Yeah.
From your mom, from your school teacher, from, a movie you saw where the princess wanted the prince to act a certain way. We learned that conditioning from women. But what's interesting about this is even women will say, I want a man who can express his emotions and be vulnerable with me. And then they get dumped, and they're like, "What? I don't understand. I was so nice, and I shared all of my feelings." And who does she go with? I hate using the term, but you guys be able to wrap your head around this when I say it. She goes with the alpha, right?
Yeah.
I don't like using the Greek alphabet to describe men because it's weird and it's not accurate. But I use that term because you know what I'm talking about. She goes with the guy who's assertive, who takes charge,
confident,
who has plans, is confident in what he does, who's hyper successful, who isn't afraid of confrontation, who isn't afraid of her, right? And can toe the line or can stand his own with her. That's who she's attracted to. So she's telling you, and women do this, they play this trick. I don't know why they do it, but they tell you that they want the soft, friendly, emotional, vulnerable guy. That's what they say. That's the words coming out of their mouth, but their actions speak otherwise. They don't want that. They don't.
One of those has security tied to it. They know you're not going to leave, and the other one has excitement and fulfillment in him. And the guy. And would you say this, Ryan?
Fulfillment, opportunity. I mean, the sky's the limit.
Everything.
With a guy like that.
It's a good way to live. Yeah. And would you say that in your example, and I know we're not using the best term, but that alpha probably has those same thoughts of doubt from time to time, that he's second guessing himself, that it's not that he's absent of those same thought processes as I don't know what we call the other guy, the Mr. Nice Guy. But they're not being communicated, and that he's resolving them on his own or with other men, right? Would you say that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. He has, I know for a fact, some of the people that I've had on the podcast, you guys hear and you're like, oh, this guy's amazing. Like, he's got it all figured out. No, he doesn't. I promise you. No. The guys I have on the podcast don't have everything figured out. They have their little insecurities and their little issues. And like you said, they deal with them.
Yeah.
That's the difference. They deal with them. They don't cry about them. They don't mope about them. They aren't looking for validation from other people. They aren't feeling bad for themselves. They're like, okay, here's a problem I have. What can I do to fix it? Got it. I'm going to go do that.
Yeah. This is fun conversation. All right, let's move on to some other questions.
Very important.
All right, Thomas Zimmerman, not so much a question here, but I don't know. I like the shout out here. And it's not just shout out to us, but it's actually shout out to Thomas's fellow members within the Iron Council.
Oh, I don't want that.
Said first, just wanted to thank you both. Yeah, let's just focus on you and I.
Yeah,
I'll only read our part then. I was joking. He said, just wanted to thank you both for your advice and encouragement regarding my oldest daughter. On a previous AMA, you addressed issues regarding her drug use, leaving the home, and the in-law dynamics. I'm happy to report that after implementing your advice, she is now home and will be attending high school. Members of Team Mike have also been invaluable in helping me navigate this whole issue. If it wasn't for the Iron Council, I don't think that there would be the same outcome. I keep thinking of a question and then answering it mostly. by remembering previous podcasts that I've listened to or advice that I've gotten from someone in the IC. So perhaps just a sincere thank you for your dedication to the movement. It has made a very large impact in my life and subsequently in the lives of those around me. Awesome.
That's awesome, man. So awesome. I'm glad that Team Mike's working out for you. That the information we shared served you in some way, but most importantly, I mean, let's be real, you're doing the work. Like how many people listen to this podcast and are dealing with issues or even ask us questions and we answer them and they're like, no, that's stupid. or they do it for a little bit and then it's like actually working and then they stop doing it or they don't do it at all. Yeah. That's the majority, like we were talking about earlier. So you're the minority of people who's like, okay, I'm going to implement, I'm going to try that. And you tried it because the situation was dire. We're talking about your daughter, somebody you love on, more than maybe anybody else on this planet. And your back was against the wall. That's something you said earlier, Kip. And so it was crucial. But guys, the thing that I think we need to be better at understanding is things don't need to get dire for you to make better choices with your life. I've been there. I've talked about the separation I had with my wife. And that's when I changed because I was at rock bottom. But it didn't need to get there. If I would have just been a little bit more alert, a little bit more awake, if I would have been engaged in the activities that I've been talking about now for almost 6 years, it wouldn't have got to that point. And I could have made those corrections very easily. It wasn't like I didn't recognize them. I mean, I acknowledged them. I'm overweight. I'm not showing her attention. The business is in disarray. Like I acknowledged all that stuff, and yet I did nothing about it because it didn't hurt bad enough yet. So it doesn't need to get to these dire situations. Just play it out in your mind. If I keep doing what I'm doing, what is the inevitable result? Divorce, losing a connection with a child, job loss, bankruptcy, medical conditions. Play it out. I mean, this isn't, we know the script. Not you and I. I'm just saying humans. Yeah. We know. We've seen it all. You saw it in your parents. You know what your parents did, the goods and the bads, and you know how it played out. Play out your own life and see if what you're doing is going to serve you or hurt you. Though.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the term I used to use on when I was a battle team leader was like, because especially when we start evaluating our vision and what we should be focusing on, a thought that I always enjoyed was, what's the probable outcome of your life if you continue doing what you do today? Mm-hmm. And if a lot of us follow that through, it is divorce. It is dying 10 years, 20 years early. It is continuing down the path of being overweight and feeling bad about yourself and not having the energy. It is a mediocre job. That's the probable future.
Yes.
If we continue down the same projection that we're on, if we don't make it a pressing issue,
Right. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Let's drive on.
Luca.
I am glad though. That's good to know on Thomas's question or his comments. That's good to know.
Well, I'm super happy, right? Like that's so cool.
For sure.
All right. So Luca, what was the challenge you overcame that you would identify as some sort of pivot point in your life? Additionally, what did you make the decision to focus on a single problem when faced with several other problems? I'm not sure if I understand that second question.
Yeah, I don't quite get that second part of that. Let's talk about the first part of it. Maybe you can see if you can make sense of that second part. Well, I talked about just a second ago the separation with my wife. That was a big part of my transformation. I had hit rock bottom. My wife was gone. My 1-year-old son was gone at the time, and I really woke up to what was happening around me and why I wasn't performing the way I needed to perform. So that was pivotal. That was huge for me. There's other little things that come up periodically that prove to myself that I'm more capable than I previously thought possible. Several years ago, one, for example, is I did the Spartan Agoge, which is a 60-hour endurance event. And there were numerous times, more than that, that I wanted to quit and I wanted to throw in the towel. But I didn't. And I remember thinking about it after it was over And Joe DeSena, the founder of Spartan, said, you guys are done. Congratulations. You completed the thing. Thinking, man, how easy would it have been for me to stop at any point that I wanted to stop? It would have been so easy, but I didn't do that. And you come out the other side of it and you're a better person. You're a better human being because you did something that you did not think you could do. There's little moments like that all the time. So anytime you step into something that's uncertain, I mean, even in jiu-jitsu, I felt that way. When I started with you and Matt Arrington, I was like, man, I'm not going to get better at this. Like, this is crazy. Like, it was just crazy. I'm like, why do people do this? I liked it, but I didn't see myself.
But it's also miserable.
It's miserable. It's painful. You're sore, And I just thought, I'm not going to do this. And actually I didn't. A lot of people don't know. Like, I actually stopped. So I went and did the Origin Immersion Camp 2 years ago. And I trained maybe like 3 or 4 times before that. That's all I'd ever done.
In preparation. You're like, I'm going to train 3 times for
and
camp.
So I can take all these guys. Yeah. So I went and I really enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. I was very sore. I mean, I was in a lot of pain actually, because my body wasn't conditioned to handle it. And I went for the full week. So it was six days of just 2-3 a days. I mean, it was rough. And so I got back and I was like, I'm not doing that. And I actually stopped doing it. And I told myself, I was busy and I have these things and this and that and coaching and everything else. And then I went to the next immersion camp. And I had trained a little bit leading up to that, maybe like 2 or 3 months of like solid training. And at that point, like, I was hooked. And then I haven't stopped since. I mean, I averaged 4 to 5 days a week for the last year, a little over a year, maybe like a year and a half now.
Yeah.
But it would have been easy for me to like never return to it. I mean, how many things do we do in our own lives, your life, where it's like, yeah, it was a little difficult and I just stopped. And then you come up with all the excuses. And then you prove to yourself, to go back to what we were saying, if you look at it, imagine this line, all right? And here you are sitting in the middle. You can either go towards the side of a winner or towards the side of a loser. And so when you throw in the towel and you start making excuses, you move off the center line and you just move a little bit more to the loser side. And then you make another bad decision or throw in the towel or quit, and you move just a little bit more. And before you know it, if you keep compounding those poor decisions, you are a loser, a complete loser. Or alternatively, you say, you know what, like, I don't feel like going to the gym today, but I'm going to go. Well, you move off the center line over to the winner category. And then you committed to helping your friend move this weekend, and you don't want to do it, but you committed to it and you want to be a good friend. And so you go and you help him and you move just a little bit further towards the winner side of things. And you compound enough of those actions and behaviors together, you look back at your life and think, oh my goodness, look what I created. And guess what all the losers say? You got lucky. Oh, wouldn't it be nice? Oh, it must be nice to have all this free time or have all that money or have that business or just have something miraculously fall into your life. Those are guys that made bad decisions. They still don't recognize they made compounding poor decisions. And they're over here on the loser side of the spectrum. And they're looking at these people on the winner side of the spectrum. And they can't acknowledge their own mistakes. And they certainly won't acknowledge your correct choices and decisions. And there's a huge disparity that they can't seem to wrap their heads around.
Yeah. And I think those guys that go onto that loser side, let's use the example of backing out of your word and not helping someone move. They don't think they're on a loser side. Right. They're buying their BS and going, hey, you know what? It was a long day yesterday. I was tired. It's okay. They come up with a solid reason, right? And go, oh, you know what? No big deal. Oh, you know what? Work's busy. So I gave a subpar performance and just decent work. And they keep down this path to become more of a loser. Meanwhile, they have no idea they're a loser because it's all been justified in their mind that like, oh yeah, I'm still down that middle, right? can jump over there. In reality, they're proving to themselves, subconsciously, they're proving to themselves over and over again, you can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do it and you won't. And they
Right.
teach themselves that. Man, integrity gap.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Definitely. The other thing too we have to consider is, and I'm guilty of this, Kip, you're guilty of this. I consider myself on the winning side of that spectrum through decisions I've made. But that doesn't mean that I don't make loser decisions.
Yeah, and just move up back over
Yeah.
to the middle a little.
So here's
Totally.
the key. If you're on the winning side of the spectrum and you make a loser decision, you actually move back a little bit further to that center line. If you make enough of them, you go the wrong way. So the key is when you make a stupid decision, and you will, and I will, and I'll continue to make them, and so will you, Kip, that you stop it in its tracks. And even better is you correct it so you make that ground back up, right? So you rectify the situation, you do whatever you can to make the situation right, and then you get back on track to where you were before. But yeah, man, you could take 5 steps forward and very easily take 6 steps back. So you got to keep the ball rolling, and you've got to constantly and continually and in all ways make the right winning decisions. And when you make losing decisions, fix it quickly. Don't let it compound.
Yeah. And to that compound is momentum.
Yeah. Yes.
So it compounds and it gets a little bit easier, a little bit easier, a little bit easier. Either way.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Let's take a couple more.
We're dropping some solid stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, I think Luca was really saying, like, how do you, when there's multiple problems to address, what do you tackle? And I'm assuming the answer is prioritize and execute, right? Like, what's the biggest thing?
The most important one.
Then yes, right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do it to a lesser degree in my daily planner. So as I go through my list of tasks, you can see I've got my list of tasks right here. Somebody had made a comment. They were joking around with me. They said, "Hey, I noticed that one thing was pretty far down the list." They were just joking. But to clear that up, to clarify, again, I know he was joking, but to clarify, these aren't in chronological order, right? So I'll look at it and say, okay, well, what's the next important thing? That. Okay, what's the next important thing once I have that other thing done? Okay, now that's important. Now this is important. Now this is important. So it's not chronological. It's not like do this before you move to this. It's like, no, what is the most pressing thing right now? Good. Attack that with everything you have. And then when it's done to the degree that it can, then re-identify what you need to work on and what the next priority is.
Copy. All right, Jonathan Werkheiser. Ryan, I know that Otto is a strong-willed child and has been a challenge for you at times. Can you offer any insight and share lessons learned about keeping cool and reaching this personality type as a father?
Everything you experience is a perception of reality. So what I experience and how I feel about all of my children, but let's just specifically talk about my youngest, is a perception of who he really is. There are negative perceptions and there are positive perceptions on the same event. So I've learned to choose my perception of it. And that's all it is. I can choose to believe and perceive that he's a stubborn little turd, or I can choose to perceive that he knows exactly what he wants and he'll fight like hell to get it.
Which is awesome if you think about it.
Which one serves me better? Clearly thinking of it in a positive light. Which one serves him as a 4-year-old, as my 4-year-old son better? Thinking of it in a positive light. Now, that doesn't mean I turn a blind eye to something, to some maybe behavior issue or, no, I'm not saying that. Because clearly there are some things that need to be addressed that would be like a negative issue, right? That would be something that needs to be corrected. But he's also 4. You get to choose how you perceive what's happening around you. And I would perceive something differently than you would perceive something. I mean, look, we can take the rioting and the looting and all. Look, how many people think it's a virtuous thing? Plenty, millions probably. And how many people are on the opposite side of that, where they think it's destructive and destroying society? Millions, right? Same scenario, different perceptions. So you get to choose. You know, when bad things happen to you, when circumstances happen that are beyond your control and you don't like how they're turning out or the way they're going, you can choose. Is this happening to me, against me, or is it happening for me? And so when I see my son do crazy and wild things at 4 years old, I'm like, that's awesome, because that's how I want to interpret it. Now let me help you hone that attitude into something that's going to serve you, not hinder you, right? But it's just a perception. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And that might just come with some level of maturity on my end, you know, after having at this point 4 children and leading this organization, this movement, and just reflecting on myself, that I look at it and I'm like, man, you're way cooler, way stronger, way more resolve than I ever had. I can't wait to see what you're capable of if I help you hone it in the right way.
Yeah. There's 2 things that I've gotten, just 2 things, by the way. No more than 2 that I've learned from you over the years. But
that's it.
But two,
don't
two
get a big head. There's only 2 things.
but I loved the analogy of, like, you look at those traits of Otto and you say, how is that going to serve him as an adult? He's a growing person that's going to be an adult. And some of the traits that we conflict with as parents are good traits as an adult. We just don't like it as a kid that we're trying to control, right? And so I think remembering that is important. And then I think the other aspect of this is, like, how do you harness and make yourself obsolete, right? And a phrase that I've read the other day is, like, don't prepare the road for the kid, prepare the kid for the road. Well, in that analogy, Otto's going to be fine on whatever road shows up. Right. And so look at what he needs to do to prepare as an adult. And so, it's funny. I have a quick share, because it's super funny since we're talking about kids and perception. So my daughter, I come home the other day, and last week I was totally pissed off. I was angry. Work wasn't going well. I was tired. You know what I mean? It was just one of those unfortunate scenarios where I'll regret the way I showed up when I came home. And my 7-year-old, she says, she was talking to my 9-year-old, and they're like, yeah, Dad's really upset. And my wife goes, why do you think Dad's upset? Because they're like, hey, maybe we should clean our room to make Dad happy, because that's usually the thing that pisses me off when I get home, is the house is a mess. So they're like, hey, maybe we should clean up the house and they'll make Dad happy. And my 7-year-old goes, no, that's not why he's mad. And my wife's like, why is he mad? She's like, because he chooses to be. And I'm like, I love that, so right? Good. And what was great about it, and this is the insightful aspect of it. I made a post of this online, and I had people reply back of, ooh, yikes, she's feisty. Like her comment was bad. And I'm like,
great comment.
You misunderstand. Yeah, you misunderstand. My child just made the relationship on her own of emotion and ownership. Right. If half our country did that right now, are you kidding? We'd live in a different world, right? Yeah. Like, I was so happy. It was like the proudest dad moment on earth. I was like, that's oh my awesome. Gosh, this is so perfect. Yeah. But so a perception. Good. I could have seen it as her talking about can be feisty. I'm like, no, actually she's speaking truth.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. That's a great story. You know, the other thing I'd say too is, to answer this question, is just a level of awareness. You know, like, you could even use situational awareness. Like, think about that term, situational awareness. You know, you're out at a restaurant, you're looking around, you're scanning the environment, your back's to the wall, you're looking for people who are behaving out of the ordinary for whatever the event is. You're just looking for things that might signify a red flag or something's wrong. That's situational awareness. And you're doing it at all times. You're scanning, you're looking around. When you're driving, you're doing it. You don't even know you're doing it. You're checking your mirror, you're checking your side mirrors, you're, seeing how far people are in front of you, and you're braking or speeding up based on that, right? So we have these ideas of situational awareness. Well, it's the same thing with your children. You need to be aware of what's going on, what's happening in their little minds, in their little bodies, and your mind as well.
Like what's the context and everything else, right?
Right. So the other day, my son, I was working on some emails and doing some work, and he came in and he was just kind of lingering. This is my oldest son. He was just lingering, like standing over my shoulder and lingering. And I'm like, dude, I'm trying to work. Like, I can't have you doing this right now. Like, please go find something to do. And he left, and he kind of like slouched down and he left. I'm like, wait a second, hold up. Like, why was he lingering in here? And I'm like, oh, he just actually wanted to be part of what I was doing. He wanted to be around me and he wanted to be part of what I was doing. That's it. That's the only reason. So I got up frustrated because now I'm like, oh, now I got to go fix the problem that I just created. And I go down. I'm like, hey, bud, look, I shouldn't have snapped at you. I apologize for snapping at you. You were hanging out. Why were you hanging out? He's like, oh, I just wanted to see what you were doing, and see what was going on. And I'm like, cool, come on. And so he came upstairs. I went through some emails with him. I showed him, I'm like, I respond this way to this, and here's how I do my emails. I recorded a video. I'm like, do you want to watch me record a video? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. So I recorded a video, and he sat there and watched how I did it. And it was very productive. But it was because I was not situationally aware that I snapped like that. And granted, there might be times where I might need to say, hey, bud, I'm actually about to jump on a call. So truly you can't be in here right now. But that wasn't one of those situations. If I would have just taken a breath and just said, okay, well, why is he here? Just try to get a little bit of awareness about the context and surroundings. I would have made a way better decision initially instead of having to go back and fix the problem and make it a better situation. So yeah, just be situationally aware.
Cool. All right, let's do one more question. This is a good one.
Okay.
So Grant Holmes, since joining the IC, my wife has noticed an increase in drive and productivity in myself. It seems like it has made her consider what she can make or what she can make improvements on, which is great. Can you recommend any books that I can recommend to my wife? Maybe some that your wife has benefited from. She would like to better herself regarding mental health, fortitude, with the goals of serving our family and future children.
Hey, look, first of all, congratulations, man. Talk about influence. That is a prime example of the influence that we've been talking about, Kip, for years. You fix
Lighthouse.
yourself and people will be inspired by that to fix themselves. This is great. This is an amazing opportunity for you. Now, let's talk about self-development for a second, okay? In my experience, I don't actually, now that I say it, I'm not going to say that because I don't think it's true. For me, it's true. And what I was going to say is that men generally like the self-help books and all that kind. I don't know if that's true, but for me, anecdotally, it is. Like, I like the self-help books. I like the courses. I like the podcasts about business and marketing. Like, that's what I like. And I used to make the assumption that that's what she would like too, my wife. And so I would try to coerce her and trick her and manipulate her. If you read this, then I'll read one of your books. Like, I do all kinds of stuff like that to try to get her on the quote unquote self-development train. And then I realized I'm actually becoming my own worst enemy, because not only is she not enjoying it, she actually despises it because I'm trying to force it upon her to do. And what I came to the conclusion of is that my self-development path doesn't need to be her self-development path. Like, they're different. So when he asks, well, what is your wife like? She likes books on canning, and she likes books and courses on how to keep bees. And she just signed up for masterclass. And if I signed up for masterclass, I would take the accounting course, and I would take the marketing course, and I would take the how to do a podcast course. That's what I would do. And she signed up for the grilling course, like how to cook food and how to grill better, how to grow your plants more effectively in small spaces. Like, these are the things that, And I'm like, well, why is she doing that? That's dumb. Like, she should be doing these other things. And I realized, oh, that's self-development. That is self-development. It's her self-development. So to answer the question, what books? Whatever she's into. I can't answer. I don't know what she's into. The other day I was listening to Matt Walsh, and I didn't know this, he likes bees, and he suggested a beekeeping book. So I jumped on Amazon. I bought a beekeeping book that he suggested. I'm like, this has absolutely zero interest to me at all. I will never read this. I probably won't even crack the cover, but he said it was good, and he seems like he likes doing bee stuff. So, okay. Got it a couple days in the mail, gave it to her, and she was so thrilled that it was something that she was interested in, and I was acknowledging it and fostering it, right? I invested in her. I said, here's this book. I don't know if it's good or not, but it came highly suggested. She's like, I've heard about this book. This is a great book. And her eyes lit up, and she was flipping through the page. She was excited about it. That's what we need to do with our wives, guys, is this goes back to situationally aware. So what books do you get her? What's the last thing she said that she was excited about? If you can't answer that question, that's the first step. When you're sitting down and having a conversation, when does she light up? What does she get excited about? What inspires her? What fosters creativity or inspiration in her? Listen for these clues and then invest in those things for her. Hey, hon, last night you were talking about quilting. I don't know, whatever. Quilting. And I saw this book on Amazon, and I thought you'd really like it. Man, you know how far that would go on her, not only your self-development journey, but binding you two together? I mean, you guys would become unstoppable if you did that over and over and over again. And by the way, if you do it for her, clearly she's open to being influenced by you. She will start doing that for you, which is a nice thing as well. Yeah. So not a specific answer, but what do you think, Kip?
I think it's the accurate answer, right? Because, I mean, something that might resonate with you may not resonate with her. I mean, now that's not always the case, right? No. I think you could be having a conversation with her. Like I was talking with Asia about a book I was reading. She was like, what book was that again? And now she wants to read it, right? Because we had a conversation, so that might happen from time to time. But I agree with you, Ryan. I think far too often we just don't see, we have to pause and see that they see things differently. Asia does stuff all the time. I'm like, what are you doing? That's a waste of time. Like, why would you even worry? Like we're looking at building a house, and she's just constantly looking at plans all the time. I'm like, why do you even do that until we have authorization and we know exactly but she enjoys it. Right. You know what I mean? She enjoys the conversation, where I'm thinking that's a waste of time to focus on something until you have all the evidence with the decision, right? I'm trying to be efficient. She's doing something that's fun.
And if we were wise, we would not say, and I'm not calling you out specifically because I'm guilty of this too.
You can.
But if we were wise, we would not say, why are you doing that? That's a waste of time. We would actually buy her the home magazine at the grocery store when we were picking up steaks. Hey, hon, totally. I was standing at the counter, and this home makeover magazine was on the rack, and I just got it because it looked like it maybe has some cool ideas, and I just got it for you. And it cost you $2.
Yeah. And the perfect example, like here's the perfect example. She likes designing. She's totally like, and I'm like, honey, it's cheaper to buy a blueprint from another company. We ensure that it's all accurate versus her like drawing her own stuff, right? And then paying an engineer to make it real. And in hindsight, I'm like, oh, she actually enjoys that. Right. I should actually get her a book on how to design your own home and architectural designs and other things, and you should probably highly, highly enjoy it, which I want to clarify. I have not done that at all. And once we hang up here, maybe I'll go ahead and hop online and take care of that.
It's interesting, though, in what you just said, Kip, and I think this is very telling for a lot of us, is you just communicated what you value and just in this isolated thing, right? But I'm sure it applies to a lot of your life. You said it would be cheaper to do X, Y, and Z. Well, that's what you value. Hyper efficiency, cost effective, smart, rational financial decisions. You just said that that's what you value. She, on the other hand, values, and I'm not saying she doesn't value those things, but the greater value probably is the creative process, the freedom of doing her own way, a little bit of ownership in there. And these are her priorities. So we listen for these clues, and that's what helps you get her on her own self-development path.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
All right, man. Let's wrap up.
All right. I got some action items. Let me hold on. Let me take some notes. What I needed. Let me add it to my battle planner task list.
That's right.
All right, man. So guys, in the future, you want to submit questions to the AMA. One, you can get on the court of life and actually start being a winner and not a loser based upon the definition we gave earlier. And join us in the Iron Council. That's orderofman.com/Iron Council. Or you can join us on Facebook.
I don't know
in
if
our
I
private
condone
group.
that message.
Hey, you have to listen to the podcast to understand what winner and loser was all about. So don't judge us. Listen earlier what our definition of winner and loser is. So I'm suspecting a future Instagram post of winner versus loser definition by Mr. Mickler. To view that post and others, go to Ryan Mickler, RyanMichler. And of course, you can support the movement by sharing the message, and you can do that through YouTube, your podcast aggregators, and join us.
That's right. The last thing I would say, Kip, is we've got some new merchandise coming in the store that will be available very soon. Somebody in the Iron Council had said, "You told us." Did you see this?
Oh yeah, totally. It was super funny.
He's like, you told us to go to the store, and I go to the store and everything's sold out. I'm like, bro, we told you that 3 days ago. You're 3 days late to the party, man. We sold out everything in those 3 days. So here's what I'm going to say to you guys. If you want a shirt or a hat or the battle planner, don't wait 3 days and then complain to me that they're all sold out. Get off the podcast and go right now so you can get one. Specifically the battle planner. As of right now, we only have like 30 of those in stock, and I just barely got a brand new inventory, a brand new batch of those things. So we've had to order I think we ordered close to 1,000 more. So those will be coming. Awesome. But if you want one now, you better do it today. Otherwise they'll be gone.
Yeah. And this is really, as I'm assuming, Ryan, is a result of guys signing up for Battle Ready.
Yeah. Yep, definitely. Battle Ready, which is a free email course. You can check that out at orderofman.com/battle ready. Man, you are getting good at those transitions, those segues. Yeah. I gotta say. All right, guys, we'll be back on Friday. I got a good one. I'm gonna talk. The title is Brace for Impact. Brace for Impact. And let me just give you a little teaser here. Things are about to go down, and not in a good way. This could be in the next 6 months. It could be in the next several years. But things are going to get worse for society. So I'm going to share with you some strategies and some thoughts that I have around what specifically is going to get worse and what specifically you as the patriarch, the father, the husband, the leader of your community, the coach, the employer, whatever, what you need to do to brace yourself and the people that you care about and have responsibility for. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that one. Brace for Impact on Friday. All right, guys. Like I said, we'll be back then. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.